MLK. I'm seeing people saying he was a literal saint. He should have a statue put up in Congress. Chris, am I supposed to just let that go and not say, we probably shouldn't have a statue in Congress for a man who says Islam is a religion being used to slit the throat of the West, that Muslims like me are conquerors? This is the kind of stuff he said. Am I supposed to not respond to that political rhetoric?
So, Mehdi, one quick thing. I do not think January 6th was an insurrection. I thought that it was all kinds of crimes.
You said it at the time, Chris.
I just don't.
You called it an insurrection at the time. You did.
No,
I checked your Twitter before I
never thought. Okay, go ahead. Show it to me.
Check it out.
The right is trying to twist the facts again, claiming political violence is mostly a left-wing problem. But tonight on Chris Cuomo's show, Mehdi Hasan came prepared with the truth. What you're about to see isn't just a debate, it's a demolition of right-wing lies. Let's break it down.
The data is clear. People on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. This is not a both sides problem.
They're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left.
They're
already under investigation.
The last message that Charlie sent me, we need to have an organized strategy to go after the left-wing organizations that are promoting violence in this country. It is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
3 quick points. 1, playing this to advantage is a mistake. 2, blaming a group for the act of an individual is a mistake and does nothing to encourage any different thinking. And 3rd, the statistics tell us a different story. We see violence from both sides. You can look it up for yourself. So the question is, what are we seeing in response to this? And what does it mean? Let's bring in Ken Cuccinelli, served as acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security in the first Trump administration, and Mehdi Hasan, founder and CEO of the media company Zeteo. And yes, Mehdi and I have been arguing on Twitter. I like Mehdi. I respect Mehdi. I don't care what happens on Twitter. He is always welcome to make his case. And anyone who thinks that I have any hostility towards him is making a mistake. Mehdi, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
All right. So let me start with you, Mehdi. How would you analyze what you're hearing in response to this murder from the left?
From the left? I mean, just listening to the clips you played from the Trump administration, we're in a very dark moment. It's a very McCarthyite moment right now. I've been listening to your show. You made a lot of good points. The biggest point I think you've glossed over is the crackdown on free speech, this targeting of people for their views. I thought Charlie Kirk was supposed to be a free speech martyr. Why are the right using his death to crack down on free speech and American rights and go after this amorphous left? J.D. Vance lied today on the Charlie Kirk show when he said the statistics are clear that this is a left-wing problem. It's the exact reverse. Right, exact reverse. You look at the ADL Center for Extremism, which looked at 444 people killed by extremists between 2013 and 2022, 75% of them by the right. You look at the University of Maryland study that was done for their terrorism center, which found that from 1948 to 2018, right-wing extremists more likely to carry out violence than left-wing extremists. You look at the head of the FBI, who Donald Trump appointed, Chris Wray, who said the #1 domestic terror threat in this country comes from religious and racially motivated extremists, specifically white supremacists. You can keep going. The National Institute for Justice found that the majority of incidents since 1990, violent terroristic acts were right-wing extremists. The single biggest day of political violence, Chris, in our lifetimes in this country was January 6th, 2021, when right-wing extremists attacked the Capitol, injured police officers. They were ideologically motivated. You and I agreed it was an insurrection at the time. So it's bizarre for Vance to go on TV or go online and say the exact opposite of what both the official statistics say and the think tanks say. All of our evidence tells us. I mean, there was a Democratic lawmaker, Chris, I don't know how many times we have to say this, who was murdered in her home with her husband in June by a Trump supporter. And Donald Trump today said, who? When he was asked about it, he said, who? Mm-hmm.
So, Mehdi, one quick thing. I do not think January 6th was an insurrection. I thought that it was all kinds of crimes.
You said it at the time, Chris.
I just don't.
This is the part of the debate that really matters. Chris Cuomo tries to downplay what happened on January 6th, saying it wasn't an insurrection, just words, and that Mike Pence was never actually harmed. But that's exactly how political violence gets minimized in this country. Let's be clear, January 6th was not a protest gone wrong. It was a coordinated, violent attack on American democracy. The rioters built a gallows outside the Capitol. They chanted, "Hang Mike Pence." They hunted lawmakers in the hallways. Over 140 police officers were injured. Multiple people died in the aftermath. Calling that just words is an insult to everyone who risked their lives defending the Capitol that day. And it's rewriting history. The FBI called it domestic terrorism. Prosecutors have charged people with seditious conspiracy. Judges themselves have described it as an attempt to overthrow the election. And yet, right here, we see the game being played. Downplay the violence, shift blame elsewhere, act like it wasn't that bad. That's how the right normalizes extremism, by pretending January 6th wasn't an insurrection, when all the evidence says otherwise. Mehdi was right to push back, because if we allow this revisionism to stand, then January 6th becomes just another footnote instead of the warning it really is.
You called it an insurrection at the time. You did.
No,
I checked your Twitter before I came on
never
air.
thought.
Okay,
Go
we'll have
ahead,
to
show it to me.
check it
But
afterwards.
I never thought that they were trying to take over the government. That's what an insurrection is. But it doesn't matter. It was bad. But we're dealing with new bad stuff. But
it was political violence. We
Now,
can agree, right, Chris? It was political violence.
100%. It was political violence, but this was a murder for what somebody was saying.
Well, they were trying to murder Mike Pence, Chris. They were trying to murder Mike Pence.
Well, but they didn't. Those are just words. And if you killed somebody for saying it, you would have had a problem.
Hold on, because he survived? Because Mike Pence survived an assassination attempt, it's fine?
Well, it's no assassination attempt. They never had hands on him. They didn't do anything to him. But my point is speech versus actions, okay? But Ken, speech versus actions.
Killing of a Democratic lawmaker this summer. Murder.
Yeah, Hortman was killed. Two people were killed. Yes.
That was murder.
Go ahead, Ken.
And Charlie Kirk's killing was murder. Speech is not violence, which is something we hear a lot in the rhetoric about free speech. Violence is violence. And one of the reasons it's important to reject the speech as violence, which is one of the excuses I'm hearing an awful lot about excusing Charlie Kirk's murder, is because then you devalue the significance on a moral basis of actual violence. And it's important, an opportunity for unity that I think still exists is for everyone to reject violence for political ends. Chris, you'll remember I said this over and over and over back in 2020 when I was the deputy secretary and cities across the country were burning. And then elected officials were very accepting, frankly, and excusing. Some of them were helping in the form of bailing people out, violent protesters. You even noted that early on in that process that these things don't always have to be peaceful. And I disagree. They do have to be peaceful. That's something we should all, left and right, be able to agree on. It's still there to be a unifying point, the rejection of violence, which is something Charlie Kirk lived and died for. People who actually watched him interact with people who disagreed with him, you and I are very passionate. Mehdi's obviously very passionate. Charlie was incredibly level in how he communicated with people. He was firm, but he never got angry. He didn't call people names. He respected them. He told them he respected them. And frankly, it's a model for all of us, left and right, to emulate, not the violence.
Well, I don't know about emulating everything about it, but that's not the point. Two quick things, and then back to you, Mehdi. The first thing is that I never said that protests aren't supposed to be peaceful. I know what the First Amendment is. What I said was at the time when the protests first started, there was so much pushback against the speech. What are they saying? They're saying things at cops. They're saying the ugliest things, the worst things. And I said, what do you think they're going to do? Sing slave hymns and then go home? You know, nobody ever said it's going to be peaceful out there. They're going to say a lot of things that are going to bother you. That's the price of our freedom and our democracy in this country. That was my point. Now, Mehdi, the idea of, is it time, place, and manner that, hey, I condemn this. This is unacceptable, what happened to Charlie Kirk. But he said a lot of things that were fill in the blank of extremist and abhorrent things. Why put those together right now?
So, Chris, I'm glad you asked me that question. It's a perfect timing because with respect to Ken made a very good point about rejecting violence. I agree with Ken. The problem, of course, is that Ken's former boss, Donald Trump, pardoned a bunch of politically violent people earlier this year. He's even dangled pardons in front of the kidnappers.
So did Joe Biden.
the attempted, I'm not here to defend Joe Biden, but Donald Trump pardoned a bunch of political extremists who attacked the Capitol. And he's also, Chris, dangled pardons in front of the people who wanted to kidnap and maybe kill Gretchen Whitmer, like horrible political extremists. He's talked about pardoning them as well. So that's a real problem. And we need the president, as you said in your introduction, to really lead on this and use this killing of his friend to say, you know what, all of us tone it down. This is a president who's called his enemies scum, vermin, animals. You know, Chris, better than me what he's called his political enemies, including you. So that's what we need from the president. We're not getting it from the president. We're getting more kind of talk of pardons. The other issue which you asked about Charlie Kirk, look, I differ from you on this, Chris, and this is what we argued on Twitter. I think public figures are not private figures. I think public figures, when they die, of course we should be respectful to their families. I've said time and again that it breaks my heart to think about what his children are going through, what his widow is going through. It's horrific what happened to him. I can't even watch that video. I refuse to watch that video of what happened to him. But he's a public figure. I'm a public figure. Chris, you're a public figure. When we die, people are going to look at what we said and say, well, I agreed with him on this, I agreed with him on that. And the problem is Ken and the right are trying to almost deify him. What Ken just said is not true, that Charlie never called for violence, that Charlie was level. Charlie called for me to be deported from America because he didn't like a monologue I did on COVID. He called for Joe Biden to be executed by death penalty. We can go down the list. I know you don't want to hear. Let's not make this a Charlie Kirk rhetoric thing. But I don't know what else to say. When I hear Ken saying things that I think are untrue, then I have to respond. You know me, Chris, it's in my nature. I have to respond and say, well, that's not true. Here are the facts. Just last week, the day before he died, the day before he was brutally murdered, he said that Islam is the sword the left is using to slit the throat of America. I don't think that's rhetoric that people should be emulating. I find that deeply offensive rhetoric. Obviously, it doesn't justify killing him. Nothing justifies killing him. But please don't tell me that he was a level-headed person who never insulted or abused anyone. That's just not true. He asked for people to post bail on the guy who attacked Paul Pelosi in his home, a violent extremist, Trump supporter, election denier, who attacked Paul Pelosi in his home, is now in prison for attempted murder. Charlie called for bail to be posted for him by an American hero. So that's the kind of rhetoric I don't think we need or emulate.
And here's where Ken Cuccinelli completely loses credibility. He tries to present Charlie Kirk as this calm, respectful, almost saint-like figure, someone who never called names, never got angry, and supposedly lived and died for civility. That's not just false, it's insulting to anyone who actually paid attention to Charlie Kirk's career. Mehdi Hasan was right to shut that down immediately, because the receipts are there. Charlie Kirk wasn't some model of respectful debate. He openly called for Joe Biden to face the death penalty. He smeared Muslims as a threat to America, saying Islam was the sword the left uses to slit the throat of the country. He promoted conspiracy theories that fueled extremism. And let's not forget he defended the man who brutally attacked Paul Pelosi, calling him an American hero who deserved bail. This isn't just bad taste, it's dangerous rhetoric. When leaders normalize violent language, when they glorify extremists, it creates the exact climate of political violence we're seeing now. You don't get to fuel the fire and then pretend to be shocked when the flames spread. So no, Charlie Kirk wasn't a saint, and trying to turn him into one now after his death is revisionist history. Mehdi was right to call it out, because if we let this narrative slide, we erase the real damage Kirk did while he was alive. And that's how the cycle of extremism continues.
What is the difference? What is the difference between telling the truth and rationalizing the murder? That's why I talk about time, place, and manner. That when you say, look, this is unacceptable, but he said a lot of terrible things, it sounds like you're not as upset that he was murdered because he said those things.
With respect, Chris, that's not what I said. I said his murder is inexcusable. I've said that consistently, as have we all. But I was responding to Ken saying that Charlie was X, Y, Z. If Ken and the right, and Ken, I'm not picking on you, but the right in general, were not treating him like a new MLK. I'm seeing people saying he was a literal saint. He should have a statue put up in Congress. Chris, am I supposed to just let that go and not say, we probably shouldn't have a statue in Congress for a man who says Islam is a religion being used to slit the throat of the West, that Muslims like me are conquerors? This is the kind of stuff he said. Am I supposed to not respond to that political rhetoric?
Well, I think it's about how you respond to it and when you respond to it. The guy was just murdered. I mean, there's a reason why when people die, if you go to the wake, you don't stare down at the box, and say the guy was kind of a bum too. And that's why your interview with Omar bothered a lot of people.
If I may.
Hold on. Just 1 second.
Look.
1 second, Ken, because Chris just brought up
let him get it, man.
I've sat aside for a lot of seconds.
My last point on this. Chris, you misrepresented Ilhan Omar. You echoed a tweet from a right-wing person who said that she was celebrating his death, that she said he had it coming. Completely false. And we are journalists, Chris. We're in the truth business, not the non-offensive business. You should delete that tweet because it's not accurate.
It's not happening.
She never said he had it coming. She condemned it. She said she was upset for his wife.
No, I didn't say she said it had. She had it coming. What she did was
the guy you retweeted did. He falsely put words in her mouth.
But that doesn't mean I own what he says. You ever see retweets don't include endorsements? Everybody says on this stupid prophylaxis Twitter. It's not a false claim because here's why. That was his take on her saying, I condemn it, I worry about his family, but this is what he said.
That's false.
I don't think so. And look, people can decide for themselves. Ken, last word to you.
Yeah, so look, we started in a place, and the president can sometimes make himself, in the manner he presents himself, more difficult to defend. But I'll go back to my experience in 2020. First of all, I agree with both of you. There is violence across the spectrum. I think we should all be able to reject violence. That did not happen when I was in a position of responsibility in 2020. Instead, the Speaker of the House called police trying to keep violent criminals from doing damage, stormtroopers. And lots of elected officials on the left were critical of those of us trying to enforce the law until January 6th. And then all of a sudden, the police were their best friends. And I'm glad the police suddenly became their best friends. But the fact of the matter is, and polling shows this, there has been a rising acceptance of violence in opposition to positions and speech with which people disagree. And the data has shown for many years that there is a substantial difference, and the left is far more willing to take active physical steps to shut down disagreement than those on the right. The right is now coming up in that data. Excuse me, I sat quietly. And the left is far ahead on that, and the president is correct on that point. I think there's a difference. There's a difference between any organizations funding violence prosecuted.
There's a difference between a stated preference and the actual actions that play out. People say a lot of things in polls, but Ken, I take your point. Mehdi, I take your points.
So what did we just witness? Mehdi Hasan did what every journalist and commentator should do: cut through the lies with facts. While Chris Cuomo danced around January 6th and Ken Cuccinelli tried to rewrite Charlie Kirk's legacy, Mehdi came armed with receipts from the ADL, from the FBI, from history itself. The truth is simple. The overwhelming majority of political violence in America comes from the right. That's not opinion, that's data. But instead of facing that reality, the right tries to flip the script, pointing fingers at the left and hoping people forget what actually happened on January 6th, in Charlottesville, or in state houses across the country. This is why voices like Mehdi's matter, because gaslighting only works if nobody pushes back. And tonight, he pushed back hard. At the end of the day, this isn't about left versus right. It's about facts versus fiction, truth versus lies, democracy versus extremism. And facts always win, if we're willing to stand up for them. Thanks for watching this breakdown. If you found it useful, make sure to hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video so more people see the truth. I'll see you in the next one.